Close your eyes and imagine you're driving home at dusk. Engine hums beneath you. The sky is bruised purple and your fingers rest lightly on the wheel. A dark blur jumps from the curb. Your foot hits the brake and the seatbelt bites your shoulder. Heart racing, you whisper, "That was close." Minutes later, the danger has passed and your attention drifts toward a warm glow in a bakery window. Butter and sugar drift through the door. A voice says, "You've earned it." And you picture tomorrow's self promising to run an extra mile. Another voice reminds you of the plan you made this morning. That tug of war is familiar, almost ordinary. But in the span of a few blocks, you've seen two minds at work. One reacts fast and saves you. The other tries to measure, to plan, to weigh who you mean to be. Thinking fast and slow is a tour of those two minds and the hidden forces that nudge decisions when life rarely gives you perfect information and never gives you unlimited time. Thinking fast and slow is Daniel Kahneman's invitation to step backstage and watch those minds at work. Kahneman, a psychologist who collaborated with Amos Tversky, helped reveal that human judgment leans on shortcuts that can be brilliant and brittle at once. Their findings reshaped economics, medicine, policy, and everyday life. But the book is not a victory lap. It's a field guide that translates lab results and hard-won insights into scenes you can recognize in your kitchen, in your calendar, and at your desk. You don't need to become a spreadsheet with shoes. You need a few habits that catch you at the moment a quick story is steering you wrong. That's the promise here. Clarity that feels humane, tools you can actually use, and the relief that comes from realizing everyone's brain plays the same tricks. Knowing the machinery of thought can be the gentlest form of power and practice. It wants to make you a better observer. At the core is a simple model. One mode, often called System 1, runs fast, automatic, and associative. It spots faces in clouds, finishes other people's sentences, and leaps to conclusions with confident ease. The other, System 2, is slow, effortful, and rule-based. It checks the math, holds numbers in memory, and can say, "Wait, hold on." Because attention is limited, the slow system is lazy by design. It would rather trust the fast system's fluent story than strain to verify it. That habit keeps life moving, saves energy, and sometimes steers us into ditches we couldn't even see. Picture a street market. A vendor sings out the first price for a woven rug, $500. You laugh, but the number sticks in your mind. After a short dance, you pay $300 and feel triumphant. That first figure acted like a magnet. This is anchoring. An initial number drags judgment toward it. Understanding it doesn't grant immunity. One fix is to write your estimate before you hear a price. Even random anchors pull us, and knowing that keeps you humble when numbers start flying. Now consider the availability of stories. A headline about a plane accident lingers. When you book a ticket, images of twisted metal flash uninvited, even though you know flying is safer than driving. Vividness and recency make some events feel common, and feeling common masquerades as being common. Your mind answers the question, "How likely is it?" with, "How easily can I think of an example?" The swap is fast and often invisible. If a risk frightens you, widen the sample. Ask for base rates. Look for dull statistics. The truth often lives in the boring middle. Sometimes System 1 sneaks in a different substitution. Faced with the hard question, "Is this policy fair?" it quietly answers an easier one, "How do I feel about the people proposing it?" We do this with faces, brands, and teams. Fluency and liking slide into judgments about truth and goodness. That's not a moral failure. It's a feature with side effects. Slow down and ask, what am I actually judging here? The answer itself can be a small lantern in the dark. Kahneman describes another seductive trap, the planning fallacy. You set a cheerful deadline, feel a burst of motivation, and get started. Then the snags appear. The estimate stretches. 2 weeks become 4, then 6. Inside your head is a bright inside view, a story about this time, your skill, and your luck.
What you need is the outside view. How long did similar projects take other people? What went wrong for them? Collecting base rates feels unromantic, but it is the adult in the room. The moment you ask those questions, you invite the slower system to the table. Losses cast longer shadows than gains, and that tilt steers our choices. Offer a sure gain of 100 or a 50-50 shot at 200, and many take the sure thing. Flip it to losses, and the same people often gamble. Prospect theory maps this curve. The pain of losing weighs more than the pleasure of winning. That's why we cling to bad stocks, why price cuts feel riskier than price hikes feel exciting, and why a refund feels sweeter than an equivalent discount. It also powers the endowment effect. Once an object is ours, we value it more and resist letting it go. He tells a story from a flight training base where instructors believed harsh criticism worked wonders. Praise a trainee after a perfect maneuver, the next attempt is worse. Scold a trainee after a poor maneuver, the next attempt improves. Proof that punishment teaches and praise spoils, they said. It felt right and it looked right, but performance naturally bounces. After a high comes a return toward average. After a low comes a rise toward average. The instructors were rewarding and punishing random fluctuation, then drawing the wrong lesson. Regression to the mean hides in plain sight. Our taste for neat stories feeds another illusion. When a company succeeds, explanations bloom like wildflowers. The founder had grit, the culture was unique, the product was obvious in hindsight. After a crash, different stories bloom. The danger isn't in telling stories, but forgetting other outcomes were possible. We reframe what happened as what had to happen. Confidence expands. One antidote is to ask, what evidence would have convinced me that I was wrong before the outcome arrived? That question trims hindsight and softens overconfidence. Framing is the quiet sculptor of feeling. A surgeon says, 90% of patients survive this operation, and a room excels. The same surgeon says, 10% of patients die, and a shiver runs through the same room. Identical facts, different frames, different choices. Headlines, sales pitches, and even well-meaning friends frame constantly. When you sense a frame, try flipping it. If the flip changes your choice, that's a sign the frame is tugging more than the facts.
We also stumble over the law of small numbers. Small samples bounce around and produce eye-catching streaks. A tiny school district shows the highest test scores one year, then sinks back toward the pack the next. A small county shows an alarming spike in illness, then the pattern evaporates. Our pattern-hungry minds seize on these blips, conjuring causes out of noise. The fix is to ask about sample size before you ask about meaning. Large samples are dull and faithful. Small ones are exciting and misleading. Now return to the senses, to the body, to how thinking feels. Words printed in a crisp, high-contrast font seem more truthful. Rhymes sound more credible than non-rhymes. A face you've seen a dozen times looks trustworthy next to a stranger's, even if you can't place where you saw it. Ease masquerades as truth. Kahneman also explores how we remember experiences, not by every second, but by the peak and the end. A painful procedure that ends gently is remembered more kindly than a shorter one that ends abruptly. The same pattern colors vacations, meetings, even childhoods. Design the end well, and you improve the memory that remains. As you plan events or build products, ask, what do I want the peak to feel like? And how can I make the goodbye kinder? Memory is not a neutral archive. It is a storytelling creature with a fondness for finales. All of this might sound like a parade of human flaws. It isn't. The fast system protects you when a dog darts into the road and welcomes you when a friend's face appears in a crowd. Intuition compresses years of pattern learning into an instant cue to act. The danger lies in misplaced confidence,
not in speed itself. Even experts must be cautious. In stable, feedback-rich environments, like chess, intuition can be honed and trusted. In messy, slow feedback environments, like financial markets, confidence often outruns correctness. So, how do you practice better thinking without turning life into a spreadsheet? Use rituals that invite the slower system in. Write down your estimate before you hear a number. Seek base rates before you write the plan. Reframe the decision and notice if your choice flips. Create a tiny checklist for high-stakes moments. What's the anchor? What's the frame? What's the outside view? And when emotions surge, as they should in a full human life, give them respect without surrender. Name the feeling, take one breath, and then decide. The pause is not a refusal of life. It is a better welcome. So let's gather the threads. You have two modes of thought, fast and slow, both necessary, both limited. The fast mode relies on fluency, stories, and quick rules. It anchors on first numbers, confuses ease with truth, and substitutes easier questions for hard ones. It dreads losses more than it delights in equal gains and sees patterns in small samples that aren't there. The slow mode can interrupt when invited, bringing base rates, reframing, and deliberate checks. Name the anchor, flip the frame, ask for the outside view, check the sample size, write your estimate before you peak. Design kinder endings because memory keeps the peak and the goodbye. And remember regression to the mean whenever praise or blame feels like magic. None of this makes life sterile. It makes your freedom sturdier, your humility brighter, and your choices a little wiser. Practice noticing one of these forces each day, and you will feel the space it creates. If this journey sparked something, let it continue beyond this video. Try one experiment. Before you commit to a deadline, look up how long it took the last 3 times. Before you click buy, ask whether you'd pay the same price if it weren't already yours. Before you argue online, rewrite your opponent's point so they'd say it's fair. These moves create a pause where better choices can land. If this helped, tap subscribe, share it with someone who loves to think, and tell me which bias surprised you most. I'll meet you in the next story where we keep training both minds to work together with a bit more grace.